Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Our focus today is going to be on two kind of things. So one is we are going to be layering up stencils, and two, these are all designs that are going to be focused towards a little more masculine or one for the boys. So there are so many different products that you can use to layer up stencils. Now you can use inks or pastes or watercolors or anything that you have, and I'm going to kind of show you a range of these today that you can truly use what you have in your stash and that there are lots of options available. So I am going to start off here with these stencils. Now these, I just went through my stash and found a few of them. I tried to pick some that had slightly bigger openings like these two, and then some of them kind of have smaller and smaller openings. These are well loved stencils, and I will try and link anything down below that I can find, but I suspect that some of these are gone. But honestly, have a look in your stash and just use what you have. I am going to be working on some Recollections 110 pound paper. This is cut down to, at the moment, a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock, and I am also going to be using this low tack tape. This is the mint tape from scrapbook.com, and I have said it before, but I did a lot of research and I purchased a lot of low tack tapes, and this one was by far the best, and it is by far my favorite. So this is the one that you'll see throughout the video. You can use whatever you like for ink. Sometimes it's easier to do finger daubers, sometimes it's easier to do foam blenders, but for this one I'm going to be using a mixture of them. And these I'm going to start off with using some Hickory smoke. Now I have these kind of large diamonds, and as you can see they have big openings, and there's about 8 or so that fit on the front of my page. Now as I'm kind of working along with card making, I don't usually have a plan of what I want to do. I kind of wing it a little bit, and so you'll see that in this video, and you'll see it in lots of my videos as well. But I am going to pop the smaller stencils right on top of the other stencil, so I haven't removed the first stencil at all. And now I'm using some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to be using, just because I had the color handy, but I'm using a ink blender for this one. I liked the dome foam blenders. I find these much easier, particularly when I'm trying to get a really smooth blend. Not so much here when I'm just going through a stencil, but when I'm trying to blend onto paper, I definitely prefer the domed foam blenders by far. Then I'm going to remove the top stencil, so that's the smaller diamonds, and then I'm going to remove the larger diamond stencils, and you can see what I am left with. But when I pick this up, I kind of feel like it looks a little bit too bare. So when I was sitting there looking at it, I thought, actually, I'm sure this must line up, because these all look really uniform, all of these diamonds. So perhaps I will use the current stencil as more of a mask and mask off the diamonds that I have already done. So when I put it on top of it, you can see that actually it does cover up the larger diamonds nicely. So that's how it started, and I'm just going to shift it down a little bit. Now obviously I will have to do this in 2 different stages, because my stencil is just a 6x6 stencil. And this is the same vintage photo color, but I did not re-ink my foam blender. It is just kind of the residual ink left on there. I just want a nice light layer. I don't want too much. So I did dip it into my ink pad a little bit, and then when I lift it up, it leaves that gorgeous white line in between my old pattern, and I kind of didn't do that on purpose, but I was really pleased with how it looked. So sometimes when you are just playing around with all of your crafting goodies, you will come across a happy little thing like this, and this is background number 1, and I really love this one, just using 2 different sized diamond stencils. This time I have some old paper in weathered wood. I'm coming in first of all with the weathered wood and giving this a nice thorough coating. Bear in mind that this is the 110 pound Recollections paper. If I want a really smooth blend, I would definitely take much more care than this, and I would also use the Tim Holtz watercolor paper if I needed to do blending. That is where I get my best blend if I'm trying to blend inks, and so I always have a supply of that on hand for that as well as using for watercolors. But today I just needed to get some ink down, and we are doing some, you can just kind of try out different colors. It doesn't even necessarily have to be colors that you think will layer up really well together. It's really fun to just experiment. So once I have my weathered wood layer down, then I'm using the old paper. Then I'm going to bring in the striped stencil, and again I'm going to tape this down in place. I will say that the little pieces of plastic are quite delicate with this one. You do have to be a little bit careful when you are ink blending to make sure that you kind of go in the same direction, because it's easy to move the little lines of the stencil. But honestly, I don't find it too bad at all, and if it's still in my stash, then it has got my seal of approval, because I have a really small space, so I'm not able to just kind of keep everything unless it really serves a good purpose. Now this is some Granite paste from Cosmic Shimmer, and this one is it's quite chunky, and I like this because I feel like I can really kind of change the appearance of cards and kind of really add a certain flavor to card making when I use this paste. So I don't have any others like it in my stash, but it is very gritty, but it does go on really well as a paste. You'll see here when I lift the stencil up, and particularly when I lift up the circular one, that actually it does really stick to its lines. So once I lift up these two stencils, then you can see this gorgeous background, and I love how it's just gone through the gaps of that big circular stencil. So it gives it a really unique look. And this one with the grit paste is obviously really textural, so it's really nice to touch. So that was a fun one to create as well. This time I'm also going in with the weathered wood, but I'm using a finger dauber, and I don't want much ink at all. So I just want this kind of dry brushed look. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect because I am going to be covering up some of it with stenciling anyway, but that's just what I wanted on the background, and it saves it from being quite so plain. I'm coming back in with this big large diamonds, and then this time I'm going to use the Botanical stains, which I've been using in a few different videos, but I just want to show you that you can even use these types of liquids and mediums through your stencils as well. This is the coffee beans color, so it's kind of a brown color, but remember that we are putting it on top of the gray ink, and this is not watercolor paper. Now this is obviously very liquidy, so I'm only using a small amount, and I'm just using a makeup sponge to apply this on. You could definitely pick it up with a foam dauber, and maybe that would give a different appearance, but I'm just putting on a light amount, and this is just using what you have in your stash. It's finding another way to use the products that we choose to invest in, which is really important to me. So I am coming in with a light hand at this, obviously. Now this is I think this is the blueberry color, which I'm going to pop a little bit out on my acrylic block there. And then again, I'm going to add in the stripe stencil back on top. And this low tack tape is really good because I'm able to reuse it several times over. I must admit, when I put the grit paste on it, I didn't tend to keep those pieces. But these I just kind of stick up on the side of my craft desk, and I'm able to reuse them time and time again. So that's also really helpful. And I'm doing the same technique with just dabbing a little bit of this through the striped stencil so that it appears through all of the diamonds. Now, as I said, you don't want to add too much because A, this isn't watercolor paper, and B, I don't want it to seep under any of the stencils. I want to keep it as crisp as possible. However, knowing that I'm using such a liquidy product, I'm probably not going to get perfect results, but I must admit, I was pretty happy with how this one turned out as well. It gives a really nice texture and just something a little bit different to layer up several of the stencils. So this is background number 3, and honestly I could just keep going. I could just keep creating these. I have heaps of fun, and I just wanted to limit the amount of stencils that I used for you, because sometimes I find that if I see a million products being used, I find that more overwhelming than helpful. So it's really nice to just kind of limit the amount and reuse them in several different ways. Now here I'm just going to finish off one of the cards to turn it into an actual card rather than just a background. I have a little piece of vellum here. This is the Lawn Fawn vellum. I'm using my anti-static powder pouch, and then I'm going to stamp it in some VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is a really nice crisp stamping ink. And then I am going to heat set that because this is on vellum, and the way I'm going to do that is using some clear embossing powder so that it will melt it and have a really nice shiny finish to it. Then I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do here, and I wanted to end up sort of sandwiching this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of squares here. These ones happen to have stitching detail on them, but any squares will work. And I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine, and that cuts out my piece of vellum. But then I want to create some little frames that are going to go around this as well. So I take the bigger square of the two here, put a little bit of low-tack tape on them, and then put the smaller square in there as well, and then that way I have a frame, and for every frame that I cut it is going to stay exactly the same. Then I have put a little bit of double-sided tape on the back of both of those two frames that we created. And then just to make my life easier, I'm actually going to trim a tiny wee hair off each side here of the vellum, and that way it should sit just inside my square. So I'm going to put one on the front and then one on the back, and that kind of keeps everything really nice and tidy, and it also makes it a little bit more sturdy. I guess you probably don't need the one on the back, but I just felt like it would hold up better if it had two layers. So I was happy with how that was looking. And then to finish this off, this is really simple, but honestly a favorite card of mine, because all I'm going to do is add some of this burlap ribbon. Now you can see I put a little bit of the double-sided tape there, and that is where this is going to adhere onto. I am also getting ready a couple of pieces of double-sided tape onto the back of my card front, and this is where it's going to kind of fold back round to. So you can see that this is kind of going to anchor my little sentiment there right in the middle. So I add my two short little pieces of twine, and you could do this with any ribbon at all. Anything would work really well. I just really like the look that this provides, and it kind of went nicely with the browns and the greys. And I like that you can still just see the pattern through the vellum. This card really worked out well. I really like this one, and it was super simple to make and super quick if I didn't go ahead and make all of the other backgrounds. But it just goes to show that using some of the products that you have in your stash, you are able to make some really fun backgrounds, layer up those stencils and put one on top of the other and have fun creating. All of the products that I am able to find or source, I will link in the description box below, as well as some other information that you guys might like to check out. But other than that, I apologize if things are not available, but have a look through your stash, find some stencils, and enjoy your card making. See you in the next video. Bye!